The first sign that something was wrong wasn't the empty jewelry box. It wasn't the missing bracelet or the vanished necklace that had once belonged to their mother. It was the silence. The kind of silence that settles into a home when trust has been slowly stripped away, piece by piece, until only appearances remain. For 6 years, Amara had lived and worked abroad. 6 long years of 12-hour shifts, missed holidays, and lonely evenings spent staring at of apartment windows in cities that never truly felt like home. Every sacrifice had a purpose. Every extra shift she accepted was another step toward the future she dreamed of building. She wasn't working only for herself. She was working for family. Back home, her younger sister Vanessa lived in the house their parents had left behind. After their mother passed away and their father followed 3 years later, the sisters had promised each other they would always remain close. At least that was what Amara believed. Vanessa had never wanted to leave their hometown. She enjoyed familiar streets, familiar faces, and a life that moved at a slower pace. When Amara accepted an overseas nursing contract, it seemed natural for Vanessa to stay behind and watch over the family home. At the time, the arrangement felt simple. Amara would send money whenever needed. Vanessa would maintain the property. Both sisters would benefit. That was the agreement. For years, Amara never questioned it. Every month, she transferred funds, sometimes for repairs, sometimes for taxes, sometimes because Vanessa claimed unexpected expenses had appeared. The requests always seemed reasonable. A leaking roof, a broken water heater, electrical problems, medical bills. There was always something, and because Amara loved her sister, she never hesitated. Whenever coworkers suggested she was sending too much money home, she laughed. Their family, she would say, as if that explained everything, as if family could never become a source of danger. Over time, subtle warning signs appeared. A cousin casually mentioned that Vanessa seemed to have expensive taste lately. A neighbor once joked about seeing Vanessa drive a car that looked far beyond her budget. An old family friend hinted that the house didn't appear to be receiving the repairs Amara kept paying for. Each time Amara dismissed the comments, people gossip, people exaggerate, people misunderstand. Trust as a way of making excuses on behalf of those we love, and so she ignored every warning. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Her overseas contract was ending. After years abroad, she was finally coming home. Vanessa sounded thrilled. She cried during the conversation. She talked about family dinners, holidays together, and all the plans they would make. Listening from thousands of miles away, Amara felt warmth spread through her chest. Home. Finally. The flight landed on a rainy afternoon. As she stepped through the airport terminal, she spotted Vanessa waiting near the arrivals gate. For a moment, everything felt perfect. The sisters embraced tightly. Vanessa cried. Amara cried. Travelers passed around them while they stood holding each other. It felt like the ending of a long and difficult chapter. Neither woman realized another chapter was about to begin, one far darker than either of them expected. The family home looked different, not dramatically, just enough to create an uneasy feeling. Certain pieces of furniture were gone. Several rooms seemed strangely empty. The garden appeared neglected. Paint was peeling from walls Vanessa had repeatedly claimed were recently renovated. At first, Tamara assumed she was imagining things. Jet lag can distort perception. Exhaustion can create doubt. Still, the feeling remained. Over the next few days, she unpacked belongings and slowly settled into her old bedroom. Everything seemed normal on the surface. Vanessa remained cheerful. The sisters shared meals. They talked late into the evening. They laughed about childhood memories. But beneath the conversations, something felt off. Vanessa seemed nervous whenever finances were mentioned. Whenever questions arose about repairs or expenses, she quickly changed the subject. Amara noticed. She simply chose not to press. Then came the afternoon that shattered every illusion. Rain tapped softly against the windows, while Amara organized boxes stored in a spare room. Many contained items she had left behind years earlier: family photographs, documents, keepsakes, jewelry. The jewelry collection wasn't enormous. It wasn't the sort of collection that belonged in magazines. Its value came from memory rather than wealth. Each piece carried a story: a gold bracelet from their mother, pearl earrings inherited from their grandmother, a sapphire necklace purchased with her first nursing paycheck, small treasures gathered across a lifetime. She remembered packing them carefully before leaving overseas. She remembered locking them away. She remembered exactly where they should be, which was why her stomach tightened the moment she opened the wooden jewelry chest. Something was wrong. The box felt lighter, much lighter. Her hands froze. A strange chill spread through her body. Slowly she lifted the lid. Inside sat only a handful of inexpensive pieces. The rest were gone. For several seconds she simply stared. Her mind refused to process what her eyes were seeing. She checked the bottom compartment. Empty. She checked the hidden drawer. Empty. She checked every storage box in the room. Nothing. At first, she convinced herself there had to be a mistake. Perhaps she had moved the jewelry before leaving. Perhaps another box contained the missing items. Perhaps her memory was failing. For nearly an hour she searched. Every closet, every drawer, every container. Nothing appeared. The truth became impossible to avoid. The jewelry was gone. A knot formed in her chest. She carried the empty jewelry chest downstairs. Vanessa was sitting in the kitchen scrolling through her phone. "Have you seen these?" Amara asked quietly. Vanessa glanced at the box. For the briefest moment, something flashed across her face. Not surprise, not confusion, recognition. Then it vanished. "What do you mean?" Vanessa asked. "My jewelry." Vanessa shrugged. "I haven't touched it." Amara frowned. "Most of it is missing." A pause followed. Only a second. Yet it felt strangely long. "Maybe you misplaced it." The answer came too quickly, too smoothly. Amara stared at her sister. "I didn't misplace an entire jewelry collection." Vanessa laughed. The sound felt forced. "Well, maybe someone broke in years ago." "Why wouldn't you tell me?" "I don't know." The conversation grew increasingly uncomfortable. Every answer raised new questions. Every explanation contradicted another. And throughout the entire exchange, Vanessa never once seemed genuinely shocked. That detail lingered in Amara's mind long after the conversation ended. That night she couldn't sleep. Rain hammered the roof. Wind rattled the windows. Memories drifted through her thoughts. The years abroad, the money she had sent, the sacrifices she had made, the trust she had given so freely. For the first time, doubt entered her heart. Not a large doubt, just enough to keep her awake. The next morning, she decided to investigate quietly. No accusations, no confrontations, just facts. She gathered photographs of the missing pieces and visited several local jewelry buyers. Most offered no useful information. Then she entered a small family-owned shop near the edge of town. The elderly owner studied one photograph for several seconds. His expression changed immediately. "I remember this bracelet," he said. Amara felt her pulse quicken. "You do?" The man nodded slowly. "I purchased it about 3 years ago." The room suddenly felt smaller. "Do you remember who sold it?" The owner hesitated. Then he answered, "Your sister." The word struck like a hammer. For a moment, Amara could barely breathe. She had come searching for answers. But deep down, she had still hoped she was wrong. Now that hope was gone. And she had no idea that the truth waiting ahead was far worse than a few missing pieces of jewelry. The drive home felt longer than usual. Amara barely noticed the streets passing outside her window. The elderly jeweler's words echoed endlessly inside her mind. Your sister, not a stranger, not a thief who broke into the house, not some mysterious criminal. Vanessa, the person she had trusted most. By the time she reached home, the shock had settled into something colder. Determination. She needed proof. not assumptions, not emotions. Proof. Over the next several days, she began quietly investigating. She visited more jewelry shops. She spoke with pawnbrokers. She reviewed old messages and bank transfers. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Vanessa had not sold the jewelry all at once. She had sold it gradually. One necklace one year, a bracelet the next, then earrings, then rings. Each sale was small enough to avoid attention. Each sale generated just enough cash to fund another purchase, another trip, another luxury item that appeared on her social media accounts. The more Amara uncovered, the more betrayed she felt. Thousands of dollars had disappeared, but the money wasn't what hurt. It was the memories, their mother's bracelets, their grandmother's earrings, pieces of family history that could never truly be replaced. One evening, while organizing old documents, Amara made another disturbing discovery. Several repair invoices Vanessa had claimed to pay for didn't exist. Contractors had never been hired. The roof repairs never happened. The electrical work was never completed. Money Amara had sent over the years had simply vanished. The realization left her feeling sick. How long had this been happening? How many lies had she believed? As she searched through storage areas in the house, her attention eventually turned towards something she had almost forgotten: the safe. Years before leaving abroad, Amara had installed a heavy steel safe behind a hidden panel inside her bedroom wardrobe. Very few people knew it existed. Inside were important documents, emergency savings, and several items she considered too valuable to leave exposed. When she opened the hidden compartment, she immediately noticed something strange: scratches, fresh scratches around the locking mechanism. Her heart skipped. Someone had tried to open it. She examined the surface carefully. The marks were recent. Someone had used tools. Someone had been trying to force their way inside. Only one person could have known the safe existed: Vanessa. That evening, Amara made a decision. Without telling anyone, she removed everything from the safe and transferred the contents to a secure bank deposit box. Then she returned home and left the empty safe exactly as it had been. If someone tried again, she wanted to know. The following day, she purchased a small hidden camera. She installed it carefully where it could record the wardrobe and safe without being noticed. Then she waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. Vanessa behaved normally. She laughed during dinner. She chatted about neighborhood gossip. She acted as though everything was perfectly fine. Amara almost began doubting herself. Then, on the fourth night, everything changed. Vanessa believed Amara was spending the evening with friends in another town. Instead, Amara stayed at a nearby hotel. Shortly after midnight, a notification appeared on her phone. Motion detected. Her pulse quickened. She opened the camera feed. Vanessa entered the bedroom. She closed the door quietly. Then she walked directly toward the wardrobe. No hesitation. No searching. She knew exactly where she was going. Amara stared at the screen in disbelief. Vanessa removed the hidden panel and exposed the safe. Then she pulled tools from a bag. For nearly an hour, she worked on the lock. Sweat covered her face. Frustration appeared repeatedly, yet she refused to stop. The determination shocked Amara. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't a harmless mistake. This was someone convinced there was money waiting inside. Finally, the safe door clicked open. Vanessa's face lit up with excitement. For a brief moment, she looked victorious. Then her expression changed. Confusion. She searched the shelves. Nothing. She searched again. Still nothing. The safe was empty. Panic slowly replaced excitement. She looked around the room as if expecting hidden cash to magically appear. Then she noticed a single envelope lying inside. With trembling hands, she opened it. A note slid out. Only 4 words were written on the paper. "I know everything, Vanessa." The color drained from her face. For several seconds, she simply stared. The confidence was gone. The greed was gone. Only fear remained. Watching from the hotel room, Amara realized something important. The woman on the screen wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was terrified she had finally been caught, and the confrontation that awaited them would change their relationship forever. The confrontation happened the following evening. All day, tension filled the house like a storm waiting to break. Vanessa avoided eye contact. She barely spoke during breakfast. She spent most of the afternoon locked inside her room. Amara said nothing. She wanted her sister to sit with the fear, to wonder how much had been discovered, to understand, if only for a few hours, what uncertainty felt like. As the sun began to set, Amara carried a thick folder into the dining room and placed it on the table. Vanessa emerged from the hallway moments later. The moment she saw the folder, her face tightened. "What's that?" she asked. Amara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she opened the folder and began removing documents one by one. Receipts, photographs, transaction records, copies of bank transfers, statements from jewelry dealers, and finally, several printed images taken directly from the hidden camera footage. The room became silent. Vanessa stared at the photographs. Her breathing grew shallow. "You went through my things?" she finally asked. Amara almost laughed at the desperation behind the accusation. "No," she replied calmly. "I followed the truth." For several moments, neither woman spoke. Then the excuses began. At first, Vanessa denied everything. She claimed the jewelry dealers were mistaken. She claimed someone else must have sold the items. She claimed the photographs didn't prove anything. Each excuse sounded weaker than the one before because the evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, the denials collapsed. The tears came next. Vanessa cried. She sobbed. She begged. She talked about financial pressure. She talked about loneliness. She talked about feeling overlooked while Imara was abroad. For a brief moment, part of Imara wanted to believe her, not because the excuses made sense, because believing them would hurt less. But the facts remained unchanged. Every piece of jewelry had been sold deliberately. Every lie had been repeated for years. Every transfer of money had been accepted without guilt. And even after taking all of that, Vanessa had still tried to open the safe. Why? Amara finally asked. The question hung heavily in the air. Vanessa lowered her eyes. At first, she refused to answer. Then, quietly, she spoke. "I thought there was money." The honesty of the statement somehow hurts more than the lies. Not family memories, not important documents, not sentimental belongings. Money. That was what she had been searching for. Amara felt something inside her break, not her heart. That had already been damaged. It was the last remaining illusion she carried about her sister. For years, she had believed love existed beneath the mistakes. That loyalty remained hidden somewhere underneath the selfishness. Now she wasn't so sure. The following weeks were difficult. Relatives learned the truth. Neighbors learned the truth. People who had admired Vanessa's lifestyle began asking uncomfortable questions. The image she had carefully built started collapsing. Some family members urged Amara to forgive immediately. Others encouraged her to forget everything and move on. But forgiveness and accountability were not the same thing. Amara refused to pretend nothing had happened. She met with legal advisors. She documented every loss. She created repayment agreements, not because she wanted revenge, because actions have consequences. For the first time in years, Vanessa faced responsibilities she could not talk her way out of. The expensive lifestyle disappeared quickly. The shopping stopped. The vacations stopped. The constant flow of new purchases stopped. Reality arrived, and reality demanded payment. Months passed, then a year. Slowly, piece by piece, some of the damage began to heal. Not all of it. Some jewelry was gone forever. Certain family heirlooms could never be recovered. Those losses remained permanent. But Amara discovered something unexpected. Peace did not require getting everything back. Peace came from accepting what had happened and refusing to let it control the future. She renovated the family home. She repaired the damage that had been neglected for years. She planted flowers in the garden, their mother once loved. She rebuilt friendships. She built a life that no longer revolved around fixing someone else's mistakes. The house gradually felt like home again. One evening, nearly 2 years later, Amara sat on the porch watching the sunset, paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. A gentle breeze moved through the garden. The restored bracelet that had belonged to her mother rested on her wrist. One of the few pieces successfully recovered. Her phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. It was from Vanessa. The sisters rarely spoke now. When they did, conversations remained polite but distant. The message was short. No excuses, no requests, no attempts to gain sympathy. Only an apology, a genuine one, perhaps for the first time. Amara read the words carefully. Then she set the phone down and looked toward the fading horizon. People often believed stories like hers ended with dramatic revenge. They imagined victory as humiliation, as punishment, as watching someone suffer. But real victory looked different. Real victory was sleeping peacefully at night. Real victory was no longer carrying anger everywhere you went. Real victory was learning that kindness did not require blindness. For years, Amara had believed trust meant never questioning those you loved. Now she understood something deeper. Trust is precious precisely because it must be protected. Without boundaries, trust becomes an invitation for exploitation. Without accountability, love becomes permission. The jewelry had value, the money had value, even the safe had value. But none of those things represented the greatest loss. The greatest thing stolen had been trust, and the greatest thing recovered had been self respect. As darkness settled across the garden, Amara felt a calm she hadn't known in years. The betrayal would always remain part of her story, but it would never define her future. The sister who left home years ago had been hopeful, hardworking, and trusting. The woman who returned was stronger, wiser, more careful, and far more difficult to deceive. Sometimes the people closest to us cause the deepest wounds, but sometimes those wounds teach lessons that become strengths. The truth had finally come into the light. The lies had finally reached their end. And in the silence that followed, Amara discovered something her sister had spent years searching for and never found. Not money, not valuables, not hidden treasure, something far more valuable: peace.